everyone, Heather here. I am back to do another tutorial of a princess themed photo for you guys. I think with this one we were going to put a butterfly on her finger, so we are going to do that. But first I'm going to start just by doing like the basic edits and things that I usually do. The first thing I always do is make a copy of this layer by dragging it down to the plus sign. And I'm going to open this layer up into Camera Raw. Alright, we have it up into Camera Raw. So I'm going to play around with the colors a little bit. I really like the warm sun tone, but I think I'm going to just bring down some of the yellow or some of the green a little bit in the leaves. And I actually might, sorry, that's the saturation. That's not what I want to do. And the hue, I want to bring the greens down a little bit. And with saturation, I think I actually might saturate the yellows a little bit more, but we're going to desaturate some of the orange for her skin. And we're going to bring up the luminance in the reds and the oranges, which will brighten up her skin a little bit. I might bring down the greens just a touch, and we'll hit OK and see how it looks back in Photoshop. Alright, so this is before we made those camera raw adjustments, and this is after those camera raw adjustments. Alright, so you know what, I kind of want to bring this back in. Sorry, we're going to bring it back into Camera Raw filter. I wanted to add a slight vignette on there. Alright, so we're going to go down to, where is that? Sorry, effects, right here at the bottom. We're going to go to effects and the vignetting, and we're just going to make those edges darker. And we'll hit OK and see what it looks like in Photoshop. Alright, let's see that before and after again. So that is before and that is after. The next thing I want to do is make another copy of this layer and bring it into liquify. So we go filter, liquify. So I want to just even out this dress a little bit here at the bottom. So we're going to pull these down right here. And I'm going to fluff out her dress quite a bit here. And I'm just going to do a little bits at a time because I want everything, the grass and everything, to still look normal. Alright, and I'm going to zoom in here. You can zoom in. I'm just going to zoom in here, and you can zoom in by hitting Control and the plus sign. And we're just going to play around with her hair a little bit here. Just kind of make everything look a little more even, maybe give her a little bit more volume. In the back here. Make this bow look a little less big. The dress was a little bit big on her, so I'm just going to make sure that it's looking like it's fitting nice for her. It was just a little bit big on her. It was meant for a 6-year-old and she's 4, so we'll zoom back out. And I'm going to hit P just to toggle between the preview before and after on that. And nothing is really standing out to me that needs fixing with the ground and all that, so I will hit OK. All right, so I'm going to make another copy, and this time we're going to play around with the edges. We're going to soften the edges. So we're just going to get a square marquee tool. We're going to do the edges here. We're going to invert this. So you hit Control or Shift Control I, and it's going to invert that selection. And we're going to go Select, Modify, and feather that selection. And we'll just hit OK at 150. And now we're going to blur these edges. So we're going to go Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and maybe not that much. We'll just bring it back down to like, let's make it 20. And we're just going to deselect. Control D to deselect. And we'll just turn it down a little. There we go. All right. I want to add in some more light back here and maybe even some rays of light because we have some really pretty rays coming in behind her. But why don't we add in a bit more? So I'm gonna make a gradient and we're gonna make it angle. And we'll go click into this gradient box here. We're going to turn this gradient type from solid to noise. And it's going to look really crazy, but we'll fix it. We'll go into the HSB and we're going to take the saturation down. And you can randomize it and find, particular ones you want to use. I think I'll stick with this one here and we'll just hit OK. And in this box, we can actually use our move tool to move it. So we're going to move it up to the corner and we're going to hit OK. Now we're going to play around with these and find one that you like for this particular image. I'm probably just going to go with overlay, but then, play around with it and see what you like. I think I'll go with overlay. And I'm just going to turn the opacity down. So you can still see them, but it's not really crazy. I'm actually really liking how it's making this corner darker. But I might just take it off, a little bit up in here and on this side. So with a brush, I'm going to hit B for my brush. I'm going to keep it at 50% and we're going to get a normal brush here. And I'm just going to brush it off this side a little bit. And maybe just a bit more in this corner. I really like that. So we're going to do one more gradient. Go into our adjustments panel to gradient, and we're going to make this one radial and go into the colors here. We're going to pick something warm and bright. Stick with that one. Hit OK. And we're just going to move it to above her, maybe off to the side a bit here, because that's where the sun is coming in. And we will hit OK. And I'm going to change this to screen, but we're going to turn the opacity down a bit. All right, so I'm going to group these, select them both, and hit Control G, and we're going to call this light. All right. And what did we do with all these again here? So this one was Camera Raw. This one was the Liquify. And this one, what did I do with this one? Oh, the Blur Edge, Soften Edge. And the light. All right, so it's coming along really, really nice. I love it. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to do our frequency separation on her skin. But I need to flatten it for that one. So we're just going to click on our background here, right click, and flatten image. We're going to go up to my actions palette here and go to my frequency separation action and hit play. So if you are in my Mom Boss Photographers group in the, in the files, there is a free action for my frequency separation action. And it's going to pop up when you use it with this message. And it's just telling you that on the gray layer, that is where you want to use all your spot healing and cloning tools. And then on the blur layer is where you would use your blur to soften the skin. And you'll just hit continue. I also have a tutorial of how to make your own frequency separation action if you want to learn how to do it on your own. All right, so now we have the up, we can open this folder and it's got the blur layer and the gray layer. So I'm going to go to the blur layer. I'm just going to zoom in so I can see her skin. I'm going to use my lasso tool and just select her skin with it. You want to have the feather at 10 in this one. So then we're going to go filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and we're going to put this to 7. That is the number I like to use. Now that you've done that blur on her cheeks there, you can just hit Control Alt F or Command if you're on a Mac to repeat that blur action or blur filter, sorry. And just select another and Control Alt F. Control Alt F, and just until you have all of her skin selected and softened. All right. She's making like a little pucker face here. It would be cute if it looks like she's kind of going to kiss the butterfly that we're going to add in there. So I'm going to hit Control D to deselect that. And then now on this one is where you're going to use all your clone and patch tools. So she kind of has perfect skin. She doesn't really need it, but you know, if you see any spots, or you know, you could even use this on dresses, fabric, anything that you need to soften. The other thing that you can do with this is you can actually make a copy of this layer and see how everything is now very sharp. What you can do is put a layer mask on it and invert it with Control I. And we're going to put this down to like 30% and use our brush to just paint over those tiny details that you want to have sharpened. So if you want her lips sharpened, the flowers sharpened, maybe the crown sharpened, whatever you want to have a little bit sharper, this is, except you have to have it on the white brush, you have to have it on the white brush for it to work. Silly. All right, let's do that again. Her lips a little sharpened, her eyelashes, the flowers, whatever it is you want to sharpen up a little bit. This is a nice quick way to do that. So I'll turn it up so you can kind of see the effect a bit more. You know, I'm actually liking it kind of more like that. So I'll leave it like that. Another thing that you can do on your frequency separation layers is you can paint. So what you can do is just add a blank layer above your blur layer and take your brush and you can just paint. So you want to do it only at like 10% though. But say you wanted to lighten up under her eyes or something. You can just select, so with Alt, you can select the bright part of her face, and with your brush, just paint underneath that eye to brighten it up. Say you wanted to brighten up this part of her arm a little bit more. Let's get our brush a bit bigger. We'll select the bright part of her skin and just paint on there to brighten that up. And I'll hit before and after so you can kind of see the difference. So it just brightens it up a little bit. And that is all I would do with this frequency separation layer, is that. So we'll just zoom back out here. And let's bring in the butterfly. So I will be right back with the butterfly. All right, I am back with the butterfly, and this is the one that I've chosen. I found these butterflies on Etsy. I like to find a lot of my little overlays and such from Etsy. They're pretty reasonably priced, and they work really well for these fantasy images. So all I did was, from the folder, I dragged and dropped it onto my image. And it's already going to have the transform tool on it, so you can resize it. And just make sure that this little chain is locked down. And we'll just resize this butterfly. I'm going to zoom in. And we'll move it to her fingers here. I'm going to zoom in some more. Now, you could make it as small or as big as you like. And I'll just leave it like that, hit enter. And it's going to need a shadow. So it's going to be a soft shadow. As you can see, they're very soft shadows in this image. So I will just put a little layer on underneath this butterfly. And I'm going to turn this layer's blending mode to multiply. And I'm just going to select a dark color from the image. So we'll just hit Alt, and I'm going to select maybe this like dark brown color right here. Maybe make it a bit darker and hit OK. And again, with the opacity only at 10 with your brush, and I'm going to make this brush, I'm going to adjust it so that it's a little sitting a little flatter. And we will just start brushing it on under our butterfly on her fingers here. Okay, I will bring that opacity down a little, and I noticed that when I was turning it on and off, we'll just put this back to a normal brush, that I got it on the background just slightly, so we'll just zoom in and paint that off. So we'll have to put a layer mask on this layer. And with this small brush, we'll just paint it off the background here under the butterfly. Oh, yeah, opacity at 100%. All right. That looks good. I'm just gonna zoom out here and see how that's looking. I feel like the butterfly is a little sharper than her, so I'm going to go to the butterfly layer, and I'm going to go filter blur and then Gaussian blur, and I'm only going to put it at like 0.5 and just see what that looks like. Yeah, like 0.5 is good, and hit enter. I'm going to name this from 1 to butterfly. And we're going to put butterfly shadow. And we'll just zoom out here. That looks really cute. Love it. All right. The next thing I want to do is my dodge and burn. All right, so I like to do my initial dodge and burn with my curves layers. So I'm going to make 2 curves layers. One, I'm going to bring the midtones down. And I'm going to rename this burn. We will need to invert this layer, so Control I to invert. And make another curves layer, and with this one we will bring the midtones up, and we'll rename this dodge, and Control I to invert the layer, Control I, there we go. And just with a soft brush at 100%, we will go into all the little highlights on her, and oh sorry, this is the burn layer, so Control Z to go back. So we're gonna paint on the burn, like we are going to paint onto the shadows of her. So we will just paint on the shadows. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. We'll turn the opacity down. I'm looking at her dress here. There we go. That looks a little more realistic here. So I'll just slowly paint some of that on. Whoops. And we'll go into the highlights. Okay, I'll just turn this down a little bit as well, but it doesn't need to go as much as the burn did. And I'm just going to group these and name it Dodge and Burn. I'm going to hit before and after. I like to zoom out to do that sometimes too. Okay, and with those Dodge and Burn at 50% on my brush, I'm going to go over the background as well. So on this burn, we're going to go through the trees and all the shadows on the background. You could even just do one big dot on her to make her brighter. Whatever you want to do. All right, so let's do a before and after on that one. Before and after. And we're going to do a second Dodge and Burn layer, but this time I'm going to actually make a new layer. So we'll go to Layer, New Layer, and I'm going to call this Dodge and Burn 2. Oh, oops, I made a mistake there. Let's do that again. So we're going to go up to Layer, New Layer, and we'll name it Dodge and Burn 2. But this time we're going to put it as an overlay, and we're going to put fill with 50% gray. And I'm going to hit OK. Now I'm actually going to use the Dodge and Burn. I like to keep it very low on the exposure, around 2-3%. And with with the Dodge, I only dodge the highlights. And so I'm going to go ahead and do that. We'll zoom into her. And we'll just go back. Control Z to go back when you make a mistake. I actually have it still on my brush. So we're going to go back to that Dodge. There we go. And we're just going to basically paint on. And the more you paint it, the more it's going to just build up. And that's what you want to do. You just want to build up your Dodge and Burn. And the more you build it up, the more it's going to look like a painting. Okay, I'm going to hit before and after on this just to see the difference. That's before, and that's after. And I'm just going to go over some of the background again with this. A larger brush over the shadow areas. All right, now I feel like I really want to add to this dreaminess. I'm just going to bring that back up to the top there. So that's before and after. So I want to add to the dreaminess a little bit, and I think I want to blur the background even more. So I'm going to make a copy. So we'll go Shift Control Alt E, and that's going to make a new copy, but keep all of these layers underneath it. So I need to first select my subject, and I'm going to just zoom in and select her with the quick selection tool. I'm actually Control Z. I want to see what select subject does, if it's going to do it or not. We'll see. Sometimes it does an amazing job, and other times not so much. Oh wow, that did really, really good. All right, so I'm gonna go select, I'm gonna go modify, and I'm gonna go feather, but I'm only gonna feather it at like 0.5 or 1, and we'll hit OK. And then I'm gonna go Control J, and that's gonna make a copy of my subject. All right. As you can see, I'll show you. So that made a copy of my subject. All right, so the next thing that I want to do here is blur this background layer. I think I might actually make a copy of it and then blur this one, because if I make a mistake, then, you know, I have that extra layer. So we are going to go to blur, filter, blur, and again Gaussian blur, and I'm just going to, you know, ramp it up and see how much I want. I'm just looking at this area behind her head. So I think I'm gonna make it like 5 and just see what that looks like. Obviously we don't want the entire image to be blurred. We just want that piece in behind her to be blurred. I'm going to do it one more time. I just want to see like what it would look like really dramatic, just for the heck of it. All right, so I'm going to hit OK. And if we need to turn the opacity down, we can. So, but first what we have to do is put a layer mask on this, and I'm going to invert it, Control I, and I'm just going to start painting it behind her. So with my brush here, I'll zoom out with a larger brush, and I just want it to be kind of like from this point on, so from these trees on. Okay, I'm going to put it at 100%. Now I'm going to put the opacity down a bit and blend it a bit better here. Oops, Control Z. We're going to go back to our black brush. I just realized I missed a few spots here on the mask. So we will paint those in. All right, so I want to then put my brush down to, I'm going to put it at 40. Oops. And we're going to try and blend it a bit more. So we will paint back in some white at 40, just down here. Oops, I think I wanted my black brush, sorry. Black brush at 40. We're just gonna try and blend it. So I decided to go back to 20% and do 20% instead of 40 at first. We're gonna do 20%. to blend, and maybe a little bit around her as well. And then we'll do 40%. And again, just kind of blend it here. So let's just see what that looks like there. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. There. I think I like that, actually. So we'll zoom back out here, and I'm just going to turn that blur layer back on and off. So I had made that, yeah, I think that looks nice like that. It looks very dreamy, and that's kind of what I wanted to do here. All right, so the next thing we are going to do is I'm going to make a new copy, a Shift Control Alt E. I am going to bring this into filter, blur, and surface blur. And we're going to play around with that artistic painterly look. So we're going to hit OK on that one. And I'm going to make another copy. So I did surface blur on this one. Sorry. Okay, so I did a blur. All right, so I did a blur on this one. So we'll just say blur. And I'll make another copy of this. We'll just drag it down. I'm going to rename this one to be Camera Raw. And we'll go filter and Camera Raw filter. And I'm going to go down to, go up to basics. I'm going to go up to basic. And I'm just going to go to this clarity here. And I'm going to turn the clarity up. And what it's going to do is kind of bring in tons of detail. And at about 40%, I'll hit OK. So I'm just going to zoom in, and I love how it's affecting her and the dress and the butterfly, not so much how it's affecting my background. I want that dreamy effect. So I'm going to put a layer mask on it and invert it, Control I. And I'm just going to paint it on her at 100%. With a white brush. Hit X to toggle between your palettes. And I'm going to turn my mask on so I can really see what I'm doing here. Get right into those details. Let's click right back. Oops. Click back out, and we'll just paint it on her here. And her dress. Missed her face here. Okay, I'm going to go to 20% here. Oops, just 20%. And paint it with a bigger brush around her to blend it. and we'll see what that looks like before and after. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to play around with the curves here. I'm going to add in some contrast, a bit more contrast. So bring the highlights up and the shadows down. I just want it to be very subtle here. Okay, let's see what that looks like before and after. I'm going to turn this to, sorry, I'm going to turn the opacity on this down a little bit. Okay. And I'm also going to do one more curve. So this is going to be overall. And then I'm going to do another curves. Another real contrasty one. So highlights and bring the shadows down. Okay, and I'm going to invert this. And I'm going to put this on her skin. And it's just going to add to that really painterly look. So we'll just zoom in there. And I'm just going to try and paint it on her skin only. Oh, at 100% here. And again, if you need to adjust that opacity, you can. And let's just zoom out and see what that looks like. Okay. I feel like there needs to be something over here. And I'm going to add in another butterfly. So I'll bring in some more butterflies. I have this little group of 3, and I'm going to make them pretty small, smaller than the ones that are in her hands there. And we're going to have to blur them because they're going to be in the background. So let's zoom in. And we are going to blur those. So we're going to go filter, blur, and then Gaussian blur. I'm going to hit Control Z. I'm going to do that again. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I'm just going to make it a little more, like maybe 8. Yeah, and then we'll hit enter on those. Perfect. Okay, so I really like how this is turning out. And I think I want to add a little bit of a color tone over top, so we'll do a gradient. And I'm going to go into, click on this thing here, it's going to bring up all of these. I'm going to see what some of the pinks would look like. Let's do like this pinky orange one here. And we'll hit OK. I'm going to reverse it and make it radial. Actually, let's not reverse it. Let's do that. We'll hit OK, and we'll put this on to soft light. And I'm just going to turn the opacity down. Okay, and then I'm going to do another one, solid color. Oops, sorry, not solid color. Cancel that. We're going to do another, Control Z. I think I accidentally deleted that layer. Control Z, yep. So we're going to add in another gradient. That's what I meant to hit, not solid color. And we'll make it radial again, and this time we'll reverse it. And I'm just gonna make that bigger, and we're gonna change the colors in here a little bit. Now I'm gonna just play around with the color tones here. Maybe I'll go with like a purple, because that's kind of like her dress color. Maybe I'll even select some of the color here. Okay, so yeah, it's kind of purple tones, but we're gonna go with like a darker purple tone and hit OK. And then here we're going to select a bright skin color. Hit OK. I think I'm going to turn this down a little bit and hit OK there. And we're going to turn this to soft light and bring the opacity down. Okay, so I'm going to put those two together. Oops. I'm going to select both of these. Shift, there we go, Control G. And we'll call those gradient. And I'm just going to go before and after and see what I think of those. I like it, but I am going to turn it down a little bit here on the opacity. And there we go. I think I'm done. We're just going to flatten this. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. I might just put a bit of a sharpen over top. So we're going to go filter, sharpen, and unmask sharpen. I'm just going to hit P to preview, or just click on preview here. And I'm going to hit OK. And sometimes when you're like adding in and changing, manipulating a photo a lot, sometimes just adding a little bit of green on top is really helpful to hide those manipulations and make it look a little more even. So I'm going to just add a slight noise, add noise, and it's just going to be the teeniest bit, and we'll hit OK. And I'm going to save this. When you're working too, it's absolutely great to save it while you're working with layers and save a PSD. I forgot to do that with this one, but so that's okay, but it is a really good idea to do that. And I believe this is a finished image for me. I absolutely love how it turned out. I love doing these princess images. It's so fun. And it's really cool to play around with the whole fantasy theme. And I hope this is a helpful tutorial and you learn some new tricks. Please follow Mom Boss Photographers on Facebook. There are a ton of free tutorials in there. There's also free actions, certain overlays that I have in the group files. And if you follow Mom Boss Photographers on Instagram, if you use the hashtag Mom Boss Photographers, you are likely to get your images shared and reposted on the page. And I would love you to be part of our community. Please follow me at Getzlaf Photo on Instagram and Heather Getzlaf Photography on Facebook. I love to connect with other mom bosses and other photographers. So I thank you so much for seeing this tutorial today, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.